little baby boo-boo kitty. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Beehive Productions. Welcome to Horror Humpdays. Holy crap. We're on episode 6 tonight. And, we are going to be covering, we're actually going to be covering a lot tonight. The story itself comes from my book, Nyctophobia, another anthology of horror. It is from that book, and also, kind of the big deal about this book is that this is the very first horror story that I ever wrote. It was I wrote it when I was about 14 years old. And good evening, Shannon. Good to see you, buddy. Welcome back. So anyhow, let's talk about, first of all, before we get into the story and how that all came about, let's talk about the author talk last Thursday. I went into it extremely nervous. I didn't know who was going to come. I didn't know what I was going to say. And it was at the, good evening, Jason. Welcome back, buddy. It was at the Winthrop City Library, small little library. It's a pretty cool library. Hey, brother, what's up? Kevin. And we had probably about 8 or 9 people were there. So I mean, it was a bigger crowd than I thought I was going to have, and it was a lot of people from town that I recognized. So anyhow, they started me off with a couple questions, and questions I didn't really know how to answer, but I did the best I could. And then I did some talking about how I came about to writing and how I got into horror writing and projects I'm working on now. And then I read some excerpts from a couple of my poetry books, which was pretty dark poetry. And then I read a couple excerpts from my 2 novels that are coming up here. One is The Ballad of Broken Bird, and the other one is A Woman's Lot. So anyway, those that's how the author talk went. I had some pretty good questions that kind of freaked me out, but I gave them the answer I could. So anyhow, they're just like, what do you do when you're not writing? I'm like, well, I'm playing guitar. Pretty much what I do on here. I talked about the podcast, talked about you guys, and it was a good time, and I got $100 out of it. So there you go. Anyhow, other really cool news is the anthology that's coming out, Thin Spots, the one that some of you are going to receive a free signed copy from me, that is done with the editing process. So yeah, I'm very glad I sent it off to get edited because, there was a lot of pretty easy mistakes that would be easy to miss, but you won't miss them when you read them. So anyhow, so yes, it's out of editing. What does that mean? That means I am writing the introduction right now, and then I'm going to be putting the book together, putting stories in whatever order I deem necessary, and then design the cover, and then off to publication. So I feel very confident that we will have this out by the end of September, early October. So I'm pretty excited about that. I am also excited to I'm going to read you some of those stories that are in that book in the coming Horror Hump Days. And then, get you guys acquainted with the book. And I'm pretty psyched about it. So hopefully you guys enjoy it out there. And last night's Tunes for Tuesday with Bobby Paulson was probably one of my favorite Tunes for Tuesday. We had a good time on there. Him and I play off of each other pretty well. So, yeah. I'm excited about our gig coming up. I'm excited to do some more practices with him. For those of you that did not tune in last night, we're going to take a break on Tunes for Tuesday so I can work on this book and other things I have to work on. And I also need to kind of give myself a little bit of break and stop thinking about planning things like this. But Horror Hump Days will keep going. Just taking a break from the Tunes for Tuesdays, and we'll be back in a couple of weeks anyway. So, and hopefully I'll have a pretty cool artist for you guys to deal with. So, okay. So I think I got all my stuff down. Yes. All right. So about this story, the story "Running Alone" is the name of the story, and as the first horror story I actually wrote it out on an old PC and printed it out. Remember those old matrix printers that yeah. So flash forward 10, 20 years, I dug it out of a box and I go, oh, I should rewrite this and put it together a little better. And so that's what I did. I did keep kept the name of the characters, and I did keep the very first paragraph of that story. Everything else got rewritten. So, but yeah, how I came about this story. I was thinking about it, and well, there were some weird things going on. We were on vacation, and Grandma was watching the house, and one night I had a nightmare that there was our house in Prior Lake, that there was like something. I woke up and the sky was like red, a dark red, and all the windows had been blown out of the house. And I went looking for my parents and my sister, and everybody was just sitting on their bed just staring straight ahead, and it was kind of freaking me out. So, and then I got down to the main floor and the doorway to the basement. It was like pitch black down there, and it wasn't pitch black because it was just no light down there. It was pitch black because there was something that was pitch black that was in the basement, and it was trying to get me to go down into the basement, and I wouldn't go. And so it tried pulling me down there, and I had shut the door, and it sucked the door down inside of itself, and then all of a sudden it got a hold of me and started pulling me down the steps, and its grip was like ice cold. It paralyzed me. And then I woke up the next morning, and when I woke up the next morning, we were in a hotel room, me and the rest of the family. And my grandma, who was watching the house, had called and said that she went down into the basement and all the windows were covered with large black flies. And so that kind of stuck with me for a while, and then I wrote this story, the original version of the story. Yeah, and then now it is what it is today. So anyhow, that's the boring part of writing, and probably the boring part of these podcasts, is you guys get to hear what events brought forth the story. So there you go. So what did we say? We start listening to the story. I'll read, you guys listen. All right, you guys ready? Here we go. And I rebooted the computer so I wouldn't have any technical difficulties, and it seems to have worked for me. So anyhow, here we go. Nope, that's the wrong file. There we go. Running Alone. The Minnesota wind stung his face with a merciless vengeance, almost feeling like nature was sandblasting his skin from his skull. He had made it as far as Truman, which was a good 60 miles from his hometown of St. Peter. He did most of the trip on foot, as his car gave out just on the other side of Mankato. But he knew it wouldn't take long for it to come. It wasn't going to let him get far. And it wasn't personal. It was just what it did. He made his way to the dilapidated barn, checking to see if there were any lights on at the adjoining farmhouse. It was quiet, and he thought maybe it had already made its way here. But he was tired and needed a place in from the rain. The straw was old and moldy, dust so thick it threatened to choke him out. It filled his lungs. He quietly coughed to himself and made a nest in the old moldy straw. As he drifted into a nightmarish sleep, he thought about that first night. He was a bartender at O'Gara's Pub and Grill. It was a small-town pub that sat back away from the main drag. Not many college kids, mostly locals. Tonight, his regulars sat around their assigned seats, drinking the same drinks, bitching about the same ills that have been bugging them since he began slinging spirits 6 years ago. 2 seats sat empty at the center of the bar. Usually, the bar stools were filled by a Vernon Henderson and a Larry Winthrop. There was something that made Kyle feel uneasy about his 2 biggest ass pains about being absent tonight. They were both single men. They worked as welders at Gephardt's from 9 in the morning until 5 p.m., Monday through Friday. And every single one of those days, they would be sitting in those seats at 5:30 p.m. and wouldn't leave until Kyle kicked them out at 1:30 a.m. It was Thursday. "Hey, Kyle," Tommy Gaylord spoke up. "Hey, man, can you turn up the TV? Maybe sling me another Whiskey 7 while you're at it?" Kyle turned down the stereo and turned up the television and began pouring Tommy another drink, his 5th. Location across the sporadic, which may have to do with the storm front that seems to have engulfed the northern part of the state. Channel 11 Weather had a map of the state that had its northern half covered in what looked like a storm front. Some of the glitches you see on the screen is interference that we have been trying to clear up. The storm seems to be affecting our satellite feed. The satellite signal to the Twin Cities did seem to be fading in and out most of the day, and tonight it was getting worse. "We sent out Jeff Hector out on location near Osakis," the weatherman continued. "Jeff, how do things look up north?" The feed was black. It also made Kyle feel uneasy because the static that came through the news feed sounded like 1,000 whispering voices. "We'll get back to Jeff when we can clear up the signal. In other news, a large number of animals, both wild and domesticated, have turned up dead across the state. The DNR have been investigating the phenomenon since it started a few weeks ago." The television picture became drenched in rainbow colors and then went to static. Kyle didn't want to hear that whispering anymore, and he shut off the TV. "What the hell was that?" Tommy said, laying down cash for his drink. "Hell, it's the joys of satellite television, Tommy," Kyle said and turned the stereo back up. "You notice there's been a lot of dead animals lately?" "Yeah, the usual roadkill. 169 runs right through the center of town. We're likely to get a lot of dead animals from the road." "Squirrels," Nicky Montgomery said. "I usually get 500,000 squirrels eaten up and wrecking my bird feeders. But I've been finding nothing but dead carcasses in my yard. At first I thought it was some of the neighbor kids picking them off with their pellet guns. But the damn varmints look like they've been dead for weeks. Strangest thing." "I lost Poncho," Ellie spoke up. She hadn't come home for a few days. Then, when I was raking leaves yesterday, there she was. Just a husk of a body, like she'd been dead for a long time. Okay, guys, Kyle said, wiping down the bar. You guys are all getting all X-Files on me. You think aliens are mutilating our animals? After he said that, he thought about his own dog, a German shepherd that went by the name of Daisy. When the clock hit 1:30 a.m. and the last of his customers staggered out the door, Kyle locked the door and then clicked on the television again. Nothing but static. He clicked through the channels and he only got loss of signal messages on each channel. He counted out the register and locked up. He made his night deposit at Wells Fargo and decided to drive his Gran Torino by Vernon's house. Vernon lived up in the Bluffs. It was a two-story that he shared with Larry. It sat on 6 acres deep in the woods that overlooked the river. He pulled down their long gravel driveway and around their machine shed where they welded on occasion for some side work. Both their cars were in front of the house. The house stood dark with only the light above their kitchen sink on. He left the car running and walked up to the door and gave it a couple knocks. Larry and Vern had several dogs, 7 at last count, but none of them barked, and he couldn't see any lurking in the dooryard. "Hey, Vern!" Kyle shouted. "Larry, you guys up? You guys okay?" There was no answer from the darkness inside. He walked around and peered in a few windows that graced the main floor. The dining room table was set, with a decent-sized meal for 2 single men who usually drank their nutrients. There was a low grumbling roar coming from the clouds above. He looked up to a starless sky and shivered a bit. He walked around to the back of the house and found the bodies of 6 dogs of various pedigrees. They looked as if they had been dead for months. Some were merely skeletons with skin and fur stretched over them. There was more rumbling above, but this time he thought he had heard voices. Like 1,000 whispering voices, like the static he heard on the television. He felt the hair stand up on the back of his neck, and he hurried to his car. He pulled off in a hurry, spraying gravel behind him. Kyle pulled into the Nicollet County Sheriff's Department. He spoke to one of the sergeants on duty. "If you could just do a welfare check on them," Kyle asked. It looks like they're home, but no one answered the door. I found their dogs dead in the back." "Kid," Deputy Wyndham said, "I can have someone check tomorrow. We've got our hands full with other disappearances and dead animals. Farmers all over the county are losing their farm animals. I'm sure your friends will show up. A couple of town drunks getting lost in the woods while on a bender is nothing new." Kyle was going to argue with him, but decided the cop had other problems. He'd wait it out and check back later. His alarm never went off the next morning. He looked at his phone, and it was blank and would not turn on. He shook it several times and then checked the charger plugged into the wall. Power outage. Great, he thought. It's going to be one of those days. He sat up and rubbed his eyes and tried to focus in the dark of his bedroom. Daisy sat next to his bed, panting as if she were hot. "What's the matter, girl?" he asked her, and she responded with a heavy paw on his arm. He stood up, slipped his flip-flops on, and walked to the window. He pulled the blinds and felt disoriented, as it was still night out. "What the fuck?" he said to himself. Daisy whined and made her way anxiously to the door. "Hang on, Daisy." He shuffled his way into the bathroom and took a leak. He pulled his wristwatch off the medicine cabinet and looked at the time. It was 9:48 a.m. "Must be really cloudy outside, huh?" he asked his dog, who only whined more and scratched at the door. Grabbing his sweatshirt, he unlocked the door to a small one-bedroom house nestled by the river and walked uneasily out to Daisy. She took a leak herself, with her nose working up in the air. He looked up himself and felt panic, seeing the sky filled with what looked like black smoke, as if a volcano had erupted. "What do you smell, girl?" he asked. Having finished her duty, she kicked dead leaves over her mess and began barking at the sky. "Okay, that's enough." But she kept at it, yapping over and over at something in the air. It was beginning to hurt his ears. "Daisy!" He grabbed the scruff of her neck. "Enough, I said!" A loud crack came from the sky, and then echoed off the bluff, sending Daisy whining to his side. "What's the matter?" he asked, and then turned towards the house. "Come on, let's go back in." She wouldn't budge. She sat next to him, growling at some invisible foe. "Fine, bark at the sky all you want. I'm going in." She followed him to the door, but sat on the porch and yipped at the sky. He went in and scrubbed his teeth and then put on some socks and shoes. He decided to head over to St. James Lutheran Church. He was sure his dad would be there working on this coming Sunday's sermon. Tying the last lace of his sneakers, he opened the front door and saw Daisy lying on her side, breathing heavily. "Daisy?" he said, kneeling next to her. "What's the matter, girl?" She let out a long, labored gasp, and her body caved in, releasing a thin wisp of black smoke from her mouth that spiraled upward to join the rest of the blackness. "Jesus! Daisy!" He began to cry. His dog laid there looking like she had died weeks ago. He picked her up and laid her on the front porch. He got into his car and drove off to his father's church. Littered along the streets were hundreds of bird carcasses: crows, ducks, geese, sparrows, robins, and finches. It made his stomach churn to hear the crunching beneath his tires. "What the fuck is happening?" he asked himself. The church parking lot was empty. Normally, Jenny Clearlake's Mazda would be parked there. She was a Lakota woman who had been the church secretary long before his dad took over as pastor. She was also so punctual that you could set a watch to her. He walked up the steps, but the front doors were locked. He went around to the side door that was also locked. On the other side of the lot was the parsonage where his parents lived. He looked back at the church, and a loud crack echoed out of the depths of those black clouds again. He sprinted across the parking lot to his parents' house, and the door was locked. He pulled his keys out of his pocket and found his copy of his dad's house key. Opening the door, he yelled for his parents, but there was no answer. The wind picked up outside, and he noticed broken glass on the floor all around him. The windows had been blown out sometime in the night. "Mom!" he shouted. "Dad!" He looked all over the main floor and then made his way upstairs to their bedroom. He got to the top of the steps and called for them one more time. "Hey, Sheila, thanks for joining." He was answered by the heavy winds and loud thunder. He opened their bedroom door. Both his parents were upright in bed. They were naked and staring opposite of each other. "Mom?" he asked in an unsteady tone. "Dad, are you guys okay?" He approached his mother slowly, picking up covers which were lying on the floor. He was going to cover his mother's nakedness when he noticed in the dim light that her eyes were black pools of glass. "Kyle," his father spoke in a monotone voice, but it wasn't just his voice. It was mixed with a chorus of 1,000 others, making him jump nonetheless. "My son, your mother belongs to me now, as does your father, and soon you." What are you?" Kyle backed off from his mother. "Don't fight it, son," his mother said in the same flat tone as his father. "We can all be together. Just let it happen." His mother pounced on him, catching him off guard and knocking him to the ground. Without any emotion, she pinned him down with her knees and she pried open his mouth. "He is ready," she said, still staring straight ahead. "He's ready to join us." "Mom!" Kyle screamed. Get the fuck off me!" She was a heavy-set woman, but the thought of his mother's naked body atop his, the strange and horrifying situation that was happening before him, pumped him full of adrenaline. He was able to get his right arm free, and as he struggled to get the rest of himself free, his father stood above him, grabbing his free arm. "Dad, please, fight this! Where's your faith? Why are you doing this?" His father laughed. "Silly boy. Faith has nothing to do with me. I am a simple entity, hungry for the essence you humans carry within you." Pastor Henry Scott knelt at his son's head while his wife of 27 years pried open Kyle's mouth. As his father bent down, opening his mouth towards his own, Kyle felt his life draining from himself. Gagging and tearing up, he saw a new blackness in the already dark room. Then, in one fleeting moment, clarity returned to him. The dimness became lighter, and when his focus came back, his father fell to the floor. Before he knew what was happening, he heard a loud crack, and then his mother fell to the right of him. Someone grabbed him from behind and struggled with lifting him to his feet. "Who the fuck?" he uttered, looking around him. "Easy," Jenny Clear Lake spoke to him. "We must return to the chapel immediately." "Jenny, my God, what's happening? What happened to my parents?" "Something that can't be undone. But we must get back to the chapel. It is not safe here." They both ran down the steps and into the chapel, locking the doors behind them. Jenny had a bundle of sage smoldering on the altar of his father's church. She grabbed it and began smudging the area around Kyle. The scent made his lungs tight, but he let her finish. She then ran to the entrance to the worship center and smudged that as well, and left a trail of sea salt she had in a leather medicine bag across the entryway. "Please, Jenny," he asked, "tell me what's happening. What's wrong with my parents? What's happening out there?" "Something evil has escaped the great abyss," she said solemnly. "It is ancient and claiming the land that it once ruled." I don't understand." "You can't. You were raised on your father's god, the white man's legends. But my grandfather was one of the great elders who passed on the ancient tales to me." "But that thing, it spoke through my dad's voice, and it said that the faith has nothing to do with it." "The Christian Bible, your Bible, tells tales of the ancient spirits and demons of the Hebrews and the Hebrew lands. This land, my people's land, we had our own spirits and demons, our own legends that we battled when mankind was young." Kyle tried to grasp what she was saying. Above, thunder clapped in the sky, sounding like a large sledgehammer being pounded on the roof. "What are we going to do?" he asked. "What can we do?" Jenny continued to smudge around the altar. "I'm afraid I don't know." "What?" "I was taught to heal people spiritually, physically, emotionally, even to protect against negative energies, but this is far bigger than anything I am prepared to handle." Thunder smashed the glass and busted open the doors of the sanctuary. The black cloud filled the borders of the entryway while Jenny grabbed Kyle's arm and led him to the altar. "Hold fast to your beliefs, young man, whatever they are," she said to him. She reached into her medicine bag and tossed out powder at the blackness. Little flashes of lightning erupted inside the mass. She held out her sage smudge stick, fanning the thick smoke with a large decorated eagle feather. "You are not welcome here, Ancient One. We are protected by the white light. We are protected by our ancestors." A wisp of black cloud shot out like a tendril and snuffed out the burning sage. Jenny snapped her own hand back that began smoldering with frost. "Your petty magics will not work on me," it hissed in that horrid hollow chorus. "Your ancestors fed me. You will feed me. I will take what is mine." Jenny grabbed her medicine bag and threw the entire satchel into the cloud. The flashes of lightning were brighter, and it seemed to corrupt the blackness. It began to dissipate and retreat back outside. Jenny collapsed to her knees. "I think you did it," Kyle said, rushing to her side. "Are you okay?" Jenny sounded exhausted. "We should leave. I don't think I will survive another attack like that." He helped her up, and they made their way to the entrance. He stopped dead in his tracks when he heard the whispering again, surrounding him on either side. "Jenny," he spoke softly, "can you hear that?" She didn't answer. Blackness spilled back into the sanctuary, this time slithering around Jenny. Kyle snapped his arm back as the shadowy mist began to freeze his arm and numb it. "Jenny!" he yelled to her. "Kyle!" she whimpered. "Kyle, save me!" The blackness engulfed her, and she disappeared into the obsidian fog. He ran to the altar and grabbed the large iron cross that sat atop the wooden altar, and he held it in front of him. "Oh, you are such a funny man-child," it teased. "Do you think your objects are going to help you?" Another black wisp of cloud wrapped around the metal cross. Kyle felt the intense cold running down the brass handle. He used as much will as he could to hold on to it, but his hands went numb and it began to feel like white, hot burning. He released the crucifix, leaving layers of skin on it. The black tendrils held in the air above him and then crushed it into a perfect sphere. "Oh, shit," he cussed. The sphere flew through the air towards him, and he dived to the side as it smashed through the raised altar. Splinters of wood stabbed into his side, and he screamed out. "Enough playing around, Kyle." There was impatience in its voice. "Come to me. Come to me now, so that I may devour you." "Leave!" Kyle screamed. "This cannot be real! Just leave me alone!" A black tendril coiled around his ankle and dragged him closer. He protested, but the coldness of its touch began to sap the fight out of him. "So delicious. Not as delectable as your father, but delightful just the same." "No!" Kyle grabbed a hold of a pew and held steadfast. "No, I will not go!" The cold ate into his ankle and ran up his leg to his groin. He reached into the pew and caught hold of a copy of the Bible and threw it into the dark. A large blue light exploded inside it. It released him. Pins and needles ran up and down his legs as he tried to stand. "My faith may not kill you," he spat, "but it can hurt you." The inky darkness boiled at the entrance. Loud thunder echoed from its depths into the large chapel. Then It simply sucked itself out of the church and into the air, leaving 3 naked figures standing at the entryway. It was his parents and Jenny. A faint gray mist danced around their bodies. Their eyes were black mirrors. "My son," the dad thing spoke. "Stop!" Kyle grabbed a candelabra from the aisle, a setup for a wedding this Saturday. "I'm not your son. You are no longer my father." "The truth is a painful thing to grasp, Kyle. But we are all here as cattle. We always have been." "Those are lies." Kyle swings the candelabra at Jenny, who was closest to him and approaching fast. "Your time is over." A low guttural laugh erupted from the depths of the ghastly trio. "Your father is right," the Jenny thing spoke. "Our ancestors were put here as food. It hibernates for millions of years and awakens to feed. It is a natural cycle. It only seems unnatural because it doesn't happen often." "Join us," his mother added. "It is inevitable." It was his father who tried to grab at him first. With heavy regret on his heart, he swung the candelabra and contacted with his father's head, bringing the good pastor to the ground. Kyle brought the long metal rod back to crash it into what used to be his father's face when Jenny tackled him down and climbed on top of him. "Get off me!" he yelled. "I will not join you!" She pried his mouth open and lowered her face to his. Feeling his life being sucked out of him again, he pulled a long sliver that was embedded in his waist and jabbed it deep into Jenny's eye. It popped in a thick black goo that spattered his face. "Hey, Chuck. Welcome. Welcome, Ellen." Let's see, where are we? He threw her off as he stood up. His mother came from behind and bit down into the wound where the splintered wood was in his waist and began sucking away at it. "God damn it!" he screamed and tried to elbow her in the face. "Get the fuck off me!" But she only continued to feed greedily at him. He grabbed his mother's face and dug into her eye sockets with his thumbs. More the same black ichor splattered his grimacing face. She let go and dropped to the floor. He stumbled out the front of the church and made his way to his car. Screams could be heard all over St. Peter. Police sirens wailed and then would die. Ambulance and other emergency vehicles would raise and die in the distance. As he made his way to 169, which ran through the center of town following the river, he decided to head south. The news reports had said it was coming from the north, so his only choice was south. The drive between St. Peter and Mankato was one of the most beautiful scenic rides one can take at any time of the year in Minnesota. But today, it was pitch black. Not even with his headlights on high could he penetrate the darkness. The only thing he could see was dead bodies of people and animals strewn about the roads and sidewalks. Hanging out of their broken-down cars were husks of what was once human.
"This is silly, Kyle. Shh."
It spoke through his car radio.
"You cannot run from your destiny."
He shut off the radio. Then his car began to sputter and then shut off. It drifted to the bottom of a hill, coasting into the lot of a Happy Chef parking lot. "Son of a bitch," Kyle spat as he pounded on the steering wheel. When the car came to a stop, he got out and looked around. He would glance nervously up at the sky as distant thunder clapped off to the north. He awoke in the moldy straw. He could feel eyes looking at him. He scanned the darkness and saw a dark figure standing several feet away from him. He backed slowly away from it. "You move one more inch, boy, and I'll put 2 holes in you with both barrels," spoke the man in the shadows. "You're alive?" Kyle said, putting his trembling hands in the air. "Course I'm alive," the man said. "You on drugs?" No, I'm sorry. I just needed shelter from the rain. I don't mean any harm." "You're lucky it was me and not my missus. She spooks easy." The man laughs, and it is an old man's laugh. Kyle only nervously chuckles and lowers his hands slowly. "I'd turned the lights on in the barn, but power went out this morning. That damn storm coming out of the north. Weirdest thing is, it even drained all the damn batteries around here, too." "It's not the storm." "Solar flare type thing, you think?" "No." "Well, in any case, my name's Elmer Newport. You're welcome to come in and get warm. Got the wood stove going, and I can have Betty put some coffee on." "Kyle." He put his hand out. "Don't be scared, young man. I ain't gonna shoot you," Elmer said, pumping Kyle's hand. Elmer led him up to the house. Thunder crashed above them, and Kyle almost urinated himself. "Man, you're jumpy," Elmer commented. "Where did you say you were from?" "I didn't," Kyle answered nervously. "But, I'm from St. Peter." "You walked all this way?" "From Mankato, yes." Elmer shook his head and opened the front door for him. Kyle stepped in, and the old farmer came in behind him. "Betty!" Elmer hollered. "Betty, I've brought in a guest. Got some coffee on?" "How nice," she said from the other room. "Invite him in. Invite him in." Kyle stopped, dead in his tracks. He thought he had heard several voices within the old lady's voice. "What the hell is wrong with you, Kyle?" Elmer asked. "Come on in." I can't. Betty, can you come out here and give me a hand with this guy?" "No, please. We must get out." Kyle grabbed his arm. "We have to go. That's not your wife." "Not my..." "Look, you better leave, buddy." Elmer's face got grim. "I ain't harboring no damn weirdos. You from that mental institution in St. Peter? Is that where you're from?" "Seriously, sir, you need to go. We both need to go." Elmer raised his double barrels at Kyle and cocked the hammers back. "You better get out of my home right fucking now, boy. I ain't kidding. Betty, you stay in the kitchen." But Betty had other plans. She came out into the mudroom from behind Elmer, her eyes black as shiny coal. "Lighten up, Elmer," she said with 1,000 whispering voices, "and give Mama a kiss." To Kyle's horror, or more likely Elmer's as well, Betty pushed her husband against the wall and pressed her lips to his. The shotgun went off and blew 2 holes in the door behind Kyle. There were sucking sounds, and then Elmer began to gag, as if his breath was being sucked from his lungs. His arms flailed as his life left him, and he suddenly just curled into an empty heap. Kyle had grabbed a hold of the shotgun. He was pointing it at Betty, repeatedly pulling the trigger. It only clicked and clicked with both barrels already empty. "Relax, Kyle," the Betty thing said, wiping her mouth. "I've decided to not eat you. You want to live out your self-righteous existence, while the rest of your kind gets fed upon. So be it." "I don't believe you," Kyle said, backing towards the door. "There are billions of souls on this planet, Kyle. Not eating you is not going to disturb me. I've decided it would be more delectable to let you live through this. Live through the near extinction of your race. Near extinction? It wouldn't be very prudent of me to wipe out my food supply. I'll have to leave some of you around after I hibernate, repopulate the food supply. It'll be interesting to see what you evolve into in a few million years. See what kind of religion you come up with. Someone will stop you. Someone will destroy you for good. I am eternal. You are a fool to think that this world, that this universe was made for you. It may not even be made for me. Maybe next time I wake up, there will be something bigger around to digest me. I highly doubt it. But anything's possible. Anyways, enjoy your pardon, food. I've got a world to feed on. Kyle stepped down off the front steps. He backed his way towards the barn and curled into the fetal position in his moldy straw nest. He put his thumb into his mouth and tried to find a happy place in his mind. And that, my friends, is Running Alone. So, I hope you guys enjoyed that one. Yeah, I was actually I had forgotten I had wrote that story, and so when I found it in a box, all by its little lonesome, I read it through and I said, "Oh, you should I'm going to rewrite you. I'm going to rewrite you and give you some extra characters and maybe put a little more depth into it, because a lot of my old stories were pretty wooden." So, anyhow, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you all for coming. There's some new faces here too. Well, thank you, Ellen. That was very nice of you to say that. Yeah. So all of these are recorded. So if you don't make it on time or you don't make it at all, you can either head over to my YouTube, which is Bradley Bodeker, or you can watch them here, because they stay recorded and they're in the video section of this page. I've also attached a link onto this page. If you want to get the book that this story came out of, you can get it at Amazon. You can also get it at Barnes & Noble. You really get it at any online bookstore. You can also, thanks Shannon, I'm glad you enjoyed it. You can also get it on, all my stories are available on Kindle. I'm also, because of these podcasts that I've been doing, I am starting to record all my books in audiobook style, so you guys can get them and listen to them on a road trip or whatever. Another interesting Wednesday night, huh, Kev? Are you going to be able to sleep tonight? So, anyhow, yeah. I've got to tell you guys that I enjoy reading you stories. So, I don't know which story I'm going to be picking for next week. I do know that I want to read you guys one of the stories from my upcoming one, just to give you guys a preview of what's coming. So I'll either do that next week or maybe the week after. So, yeah. Well, it's awesome to see you here, Ellen. I miss you. I haven't seen you in such a long time, except for here on Facebook, and it would be cool to catch up. One of these days we will. So, anyhow, yeah. So we're going to call it a night. I got dishes to do, and I got to make some dinner because I'm hungry. So thank you guys again. Thank you very much for all your support, coming out to listen to these. Chris, my friend Chris Vignola, she has been sharing my events, and and I totally appreciate that. I never see her. She doesn't interact on these podcasts, but she must be here, and she shares them with her friends and on her Facebook page. So I appreciate that. All that stuff that you guys do, I mean, everything that I can do, I'm doing it right now. But yeah. So it's a lot of it is you. You guys are helping this channel grow. You're helping. You're putting the word out there about my music, about my books, and so I can't thank you guys enough. I mean, it's freaking awesome. So I didn't expect this, and so I appreciate it very much. Thank you guys. Have an awesome night. Have a great Labor Day weekend. I'm going to go hang out with my grandkids this weekend, so I miss their little butts. And yeah, it's gonna be okay to see my kid too, I guess, and her husband, but mostly the grandkids. So anyhow, all right, I love you guys, and have an awesome night. Peace out, or something like that, man. Wow, what's going on? What? Why is that screen on here? What's freaking technology, man? All right, I'm out. Later. End me.